agenda. And someone mashed recording. Thank you. That was on my list of things to do. So that's awesome. I was gonna make lots of inappropriate jokes and then hit record, so I'll just pass on those now. But we have a couple pieces of administrivia to go through, such as roll call. We need to pick someone who's taking minutes, and I can't remember. I think I was 2 times ago. Dick was last time.
I had last time, and
So, it's either Cliff or Mariah, right?
I think it was me the time before that, I'm pretty sure. So
Ooh,
yeah. Is it Cliff?
poor
No,
Cliff.
I legally changed my last name, and that doesn't begin with D anymore.
yeah, and I
Okay.
confess I completely neglected to ask Nicole for the recording, so the minutes of the 9th are not prepared. You'll
Not
have them
ready?
next
Okay.
week. But I want to thank you, Nicole, for your quick turnaround when I finally did ask. So much appreciated, as always.
Awesome. So we'll run through that, and then to segue from Dick's apology to my apology, I have updated the beep analysis, but I haven't had a chance to connect with Margaret 100% because of my own schedule and working to set something up with her. And now it's school vacation week, so I don't even know if I'm going to hear from her this week. So I decided it just didn't make sense to go back through the couple of updates I made, which were basically straight from our discussion last week or 2 weeks ago. So I'll work with Sadaf to get that rescheduled based on when I can get the meeting with Margaret set up. So we have the building management discussion with Carol, who I see is here, which is awesome. And then we had an agenda item of discuss potential override recommendation from Cliff, and then new business. So before we do the roll call, anybody have any other agenda things that I missed, or did I? No? Okay.
Jeff, just an FYI, I have like a hard stop to switch to my phone at 5:30.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so let's roll call. I will just run through the list. Mariah, are you here?
I'm here.
Jeff, I am here. Dick?
Here.
Cliff?
Yes, here.
And I think we just do voting members, right? Although I think everybody else is not on the committee.
Right.
Sure, I think that's right. Okay. Let's go with that. We've hit record, so we're good for that. Anybody have any questions or comments about the meeting minutes from 2/2?
I do not.
Okay.
And let me move approval of the minutes of February 2nd.
I'll second.
Second.
Awesome. So we'll go with Mariah seconding for the purposes of minute taking, and we will approve them, and I'll remove the draft and send them back. Awesome.
We still need to vote them though. We can't.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes? Oh, we have to do them individually, don't we? Mariah?
Yes.
I vote yes. Dick?
Yes.
Cliff?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mariah, for that. All right, moving right along. We're on 3B already. Building management discussion recommendation. We talked a little bit about this last time. Carol came and joined our meeting and was super patient and waiting for us to talk about everything else and then bring up her topic. And we have now carved out some time. Carol, I haven't had a chance to look through the materials in great detail. I wasn't sure if there was something you wanted to share or just lead out, and I probably have to unmute you, don't I? So let's do this. Actually, I don't know if I can.
You did, but you can't see me. You need to give me permission if you want to see me when I'm
Of course I want to
speaking.
see you. Hide non-video. Actually, that I don't look like I can do it.
If you make her a co-host, she can turn on her camera.
Yeah, hang on.
I think, yeah,
There you go.
somebody else is puppet mastering me because I don't think I'm a
I don't know if
co-host
I'm
either.
puppet master or not, but let me see.
Oh yeah, it's Nicole who's
Okay,
host.
thank you, Nicole.
She is a co-host now.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Carolyn.
And hello, all.
Aha, she's coming through the mist.
You're a little blurry.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
There you go.
Fantastic.
Okay.
All
Sorry
right.
about that. So I'm coming into what I'm assuming is the middle of your discussion about building management and building management. So I don't know what you folks have discussed about buildings prior to last week's conversation, if anything.
We really hadn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been more ancillary stuff like using the facilities for rentals and things like that. But I think the guys are right. We haven't really talked about it much.
So
We
with
we
your,
certainly, yeah, I was just going to say, we certainly haven't focused on the issue of building maintenance.
okay,
Depth that you
Yep.
did.
so with your indulgence, I'm gonna back up and sort of give you my big picture view of some of the issues surrounding public facilities in town. And you can consider those applicable to schools and all other town departments. But the schools are the biggest occupier of space. So that's why it seemed appropriate to have this come before your committee.
Sounds
Um,
good. Let me know if you want me to share anything, or I'm also happy to stop sharing if you want to just share something yourself or whatever you'd like to know.
I did not bring anything to share. 'Cause
Okay.
I'll be honest, I didn't know how you wanted to structure the conversation.
Well, that's cool. I'll just stop sharing, and then if we did want to look at something that we posted, then let us know, and I can jump back on there
Okay.
and share that. So
So, you know, in a sort of my background's in corporate real estate. In a perfect world, when you're talking about facilities, you would be thinking, how do you want to use the space? And that translates into how much space you need to accomplish your program. And then the other part of the equation is how much space can you afford to support for whatever your project is. And in the for-profit world, obviously, you know, occupancy costs are a factor in making an investment decision or in determining how profitable an activity is. So in town, we make a decision that we need space, but we don't frequently have simultaneously, when we're talking about a desire for new space, a discussion about how much space can we afford to support, or how much of, say, the school's budget should be dedicated to its occupancy costs and how much of it should be dedicated to other things.
Mm.
And some of you may recall that when the Pierce School override first came up for consideration, the AC made a recommendation that it should be paired with a override question to have repair and maintenance funds raised to support all the school facilities. And for whatever reasons, that didn't happen. So now we have X hundreds of thousands of square feet that the schools are occupying. And the question is, what should those, how do we efficiently manage them? And how do we allocate the costs associated with those facilities? And when I talk about allocating costs, I'm not talking about the debt service that we incur to build the facilities. I'm really talking about the annual operating costs. So it's the repair and maintenance that we know about. It's the utility expenses. It's the insurance. And it's the allocated cost of the personnel in the building department who provide all the services to maintain these buildings. And historically, over the near term and also longer term, there's been this tension when the schools are constrained in their budget to look for some place where we could potentially cut costs. And there's certain building management expenses like washing windows that seem like low-hanging fruit, because anyone would say we can live with dirty windows. And that might be okay in the short term, but it really doesn't address the larger issue of how do we efficiently manage these buildings and how do we also protect the taxpayers' investment in these buildings, which is now something like $700 or $750 million. one of the problems in town is that we do not have well detailed in writing policies regarding the operations of the buildings. So there's probably some various memos here and there addressing different parts of their operations. But what I would like to see, and I think would help in both a budgeting exercise and in clarifying the areas of responsibility, who's responsible for what, are written occupancy and service agreements. Now, my personal belief is that these are town-owned assets, and ultimately all of the financial risk, all of the liability for these buildings rests with the town. If the town failed to pay its insurance premiums and these buildings burned down, the town would have to find a way of financing their replacement. If someone trips and falls and breaks their neck on a town-owned property, ultimately it's the town's reserves or insurance policies that pay for something. If deferred maintenance occurs and say flashing on a building isn't replaced and there's a bad water leak, all that comes out of the town budget. So in real estate, traditionally, what you would want is to make sure that who's ever bearing the liability for asset, who's ever bearing the financial responsibility, has the control over that asset when it comes to deciding how you maintain the property. And we don't have a very clear understanding of that currently. As I said, it's more of a negotiated transaction, and Charlie Simmons does an excellent job of maintaining these buildings as well as he can. But there has been I'm going to say, naive impression that as we build these newer buildings, our repair and maintenance costs should be going down. And I'm saying naive because there's a thought that, well, it's new, so we don't have to spend as much money to repair them and maintain them. And unfortunately, that's just not the truth of the situation. Not only are the buildings larger, they're much more sophisticated and more complicated. And so that drives up our costs. It's not like probably some of these older boilers that are still in place around town that are pretty straightforward mechanical systems that, they're easy to repair. These are, controlled by computers. There's lots of electronics. There's lots of sensors. So it's taking some more time to maintain these things, and also different skill sets. And all of those things are increasing costs. So also sort of related to this question of how do you budget for maintaining the buildings, we really, if we have these occupancy and service agreements in the way that I envision doing that, we'd have clear controls over how the buildings are used. So whether it be the schools or the recreation department or the public health department or the library, if they're going to be operating out of whatever their normal operating hours are, and this is something that Charlie Simmons tries to establish, that's important in the programming of the heating and cooling systems. We should, if someone's operating outside of those hours, there should be charges that will recoup the operating costs, primarily the utility costs of heating and cooling the space. If we're renting to outside third parties that aren't part of the town or the schools, then we should be thinking about what are the costs that we should be trying to recoup that we're incurring. That might be cleaning, that might be making sure that our insurance costs are allocated, our other repair and maintenance, wear and tear on the building. And all of these things can get incorporated into a occupancy and service agreement. So that's sort of the overview of my thinking on the matter. And I don't know how much detail you folks want to get into in your conversation.
Great question. And thanks for that Carol, we have, as I mentioned earlier, we did have that little vignette of conversation, which turned into a nice recommendation from Cliff about building use and what that might look like. Do people on the subcommittee have thoughts or questions for Carol about more detail, less detail, or things that we want to talk about? I certainly have been thinking about like what we might do for this, to turn it into something for the subcommittee, but interested in others' thoughts here.
I can also provide some more anecdotes if that helps get your thinking juices going. Something less abstract and more an example of some of the issues that have arisen.
Dick, do you want anecdotes first or comment first?
Sure, we can start with anecdotes, and then I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Since Cliff is taking the minutes, I have no desire to cut this short.
Thank you, Dick.
Okay, please, Carol, more anecdotes.
Well, I know Mariah has her hand up
Oh,
and
sorry.
she's leaving at 5:30, so maybe before.
Thanks, Carol. I just wanted to say that I went back and looked at the past, sorry, I just got something in my eye and it's like getting in my, now it's making me have a hard time thinking, but I went back and looked at the data from the past 8 years or so. Just in terms of growth of building department versus school. And the PSB allocation, the total allocation to school repair and maintenance has gone up 77% in that time, at the same time that the PSB budget overall has gone up, I think it's 30 or 31%. So I think it's important to recognize that, I'll say this, I don't agree with the characterization of PSB not valuing or prioritizing building maintenance as part of its overall portfolio. If you look at the rate of growth, it's well above the PSB rate of growth overall, and it shows the importance that we have been putting on appropriately funding building maintenance. And the math is just the math. There's been a significant shifting of funds over to building maintenance.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add to that. So
Not sure if it's an anecdote, but it is the data as pulled from the actuals on both town and school side.
yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't necessarily reading in, if you allow me to phrase it that way, to what Carol was saying, is that the PSB wasn't holding up their end of the bargain, if you could say. But
that's what's written in the memo.
You know,
That's what's written in the memo. And so I think, like, could it be better? Absolutely. Our PSB, as you said, Carol, in your memo, statutorily, there is this tension between the core function and this other thing. Nonetheless, school committee and staff have been doing their darndest to walk the delicate line between building maintenance and school operations. And the dollars bear that out.
Gotcha.
Dick, do you want to?
Yeah, I just on that point, I don't know to what extent Mariah and Carol were talking about more square footage, larger buildings, more sophisticated, more expensive buildings to maintain that of necessity drive the budget higher, or whether we're talking about a commitment to not defer maintenance on the part of PSB, or both, some combination of those two.
It's my perception that it's both.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly, it seems from the memo that there's a lot going on here in this stew. and
Yeah.
it could well be both. My just a couple of questions that I had, Carol. Do you know, or have you seen any other, or Chaz also, any other communities that have written occupancy and service agreements of the type contemplated by Carol between the building department or whatever department is responsible for maintenance of the public buildings on the one hand, and the user departments or agencies on the other? Is there a model, or are there models out there in the public sector, or Carol, I would say in the private sector? I suspect the latter may be more common.
Carol, you want to talk and I'll jump in?
Sure. So I don't know about other communities. I do know that other communities have a more straightforward organizational structure for managing public buildings. Charlie Simmons has talked about Wellesley before, that there's a more straightforward way of providing services. Certainly in the nonprofit world, the healthcare world, and universities where I have familiarity, there are written policies that talk about how you have a central facilities department, and they're frequently called shared services department, and what its expectations are as to how it's going to be servicing all the different subsidiaries or affiliated entities, and what services they can expect, and when it's the responsibility of that central department versus the occupying department.
Do you know, just following up on your first comment, what Charlie meant when he said Wellesley has a more straightforward procedure in place?
I don't know the details, maybe Chaz does.
I can talk a little bit about this. I did a little
Thank
research
you.
on this. I did some research on this over the summer when we were talking about shared services. And there are a couple of different models of this. Wellesley's model is our model is our building department reorganization from the last override was actually modeled somewhat after Wellesley's in terms of creating the division of public building, reformatting the division of public buildings, generating more support there. But there's more of a direct reporting. I mean, basically in Wellesley, rather than there being the assessment and so forth, and the town side in Wellesley is this is my understanding, and I will have to pull my notes, but my recollection is that the town basically runs the public buildings in Wellesley, and there's no assessment to the schools. The schools don't get any money for the buildings, and they don't pay any money for the buildings. The town just handles the buildings. And that's how that operates. The other model that we saw was one like in Belmont, where there is a public buildings department that is managed above the line, that is paid for before, rather than what we do, which is the buildings department, the public buildings rests on the town side of the ledger, but we assess the schools for their share of those costs. It rests above the line, and neither side sees any money from the split until public buildings' budget is satisfied. And there in Belmont, the director of public buildings actually reports to a joint committee of the town manager and the superintendent. So that position is somewhat unique in the sense that in order to ensure accountability for both town and schools, that person effectively has two bosses, and they have to agree because they're a committee of two. They have to agree on the allocation of resources within that department.
You said that was Belmont?
Belmont, yes.
Okay.
Do we do any more comps last summer, Chaz, on this, or for the other?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
I will dig through my memory banks. My brain is all on the budget recently, so I will go back into the mists of
Yes.
time and pull all that back out.
Yeah, and thanks for all of your hard work on the budget. I saw it get sent out when you sent it, and that's a monster. So,
And
Thank you
And
for
that actually sort of leads Chaz into my second question, and I think probably the answer is going to be digging into the memory bank. Your memo, Carol, had a long discussion um, uh, of the issues that were involved, and talking ended up with we can do this above the line with uh, the occupancy and services agreement. And then there was this very short 1 or 2 paragraph discussion at the end of an alternative of having it below the line, and that providing some incentives for the using agencies. And I guess I was going to ask whether you'd probe that any further, but I'm going to bounce that question really to Chaz, because I think that would be in the context of what you were looking at.
Yeah, we
Sorry,
talked.
sorry to jump in super quick. Mariah, you had to go or switch to phone at
I'm
5:30.
switching,
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Okay. Nope, sorry, I
I'm
didn't
switching
mean.
to phone though, I'm listening.
Okay, great.
I can
That's what I
figure out
wanted
how.
to. I just wanted to confirm that. Sorry, go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Chaz.
Yeah, no, and we did some digging into this. In our recommendation to the structure subcommittee, we did discuss this issue. We kind of went back and forth on it, honestly. There are pros and cons to both of these models. What we ultimately said was we felt more comfortable with public buildings remaining below the line because it incentivizes that ownership structure, right? If it's above the line, you don't see it. It's the same argument that we made in moving healthcare below the line. In the sense that if departments were forced to account for their share of healthcare costs, um, it would incentivize them to think more properly about how they're using those scarce resources effectively, rather than saying, benefits are kind of in the ether. And then I think you can really see this in the discussion that's being had now about the resources on the school side, right? There's this misperception, not on the school committee side, but sometimes in the public, where you see how precipitously the amount of revenue available for the schools has dropped from FY26 to FY27. And then, I get emails saying, why are you cutting money to the schools? It's like, I'm not cutting money to the schools. We don't have enough revenue to cover the expenses above the line. That's what's happening. The above the line costs are eating all of our revenue before it even gets to the schools. So the town and the schools have a very similar problem, which is we don't have enough money to cover those fixed costs above the line before we even see it come in below the line. So theoretically, if those were spread out, apportioned to the departments that are accruing them, that tends to foster responsibility in those departments for taking care of those resources. That was ultimately where we landed. We do see, the benefit to the Belmont model is that it's above the line and you don't have to worry about who controls what. This issue of control that's kind of bedeviled this and is underpinning this goes away. You have the superintendent and the town manager in Belmont's case, or the administrator or what have you, having to work together to agree on it. And there's no longer this issue of like, well, who can tell the custodians what to do? Who gets to say who's in charge of what here? No, there's an above the line department that handles this stuff, and that's kind of that. So that does have an inherent appeal in that it solves a bunch of jurisdictional problems, but it doesn't solve the kind of agency problem. The sort of question of responsibility for the resources that you're using. So that's why we wound up suggesting that public buildings remain below the line for now.
Yeah.
Can I just
There-
break
there-
in? Can someone make my second me a co-host so I can still participate before I hang up on this one?
Yep.
Thanks.
Let me wait until that happens.
Yeah. Nicole, can you do that? I'm sorry, I don't have host powers.
Yeah,
Sorry, thanks.
no worries.
There we go.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Nicole.
There is some difference between healthcare costs and building maintenance, in the sense that healthcare costs are generally immediately, they have an immediate impact. Deferred maintenance, not so much so. So that may, that responsibility, agency, incentive issue may push a little bit in one direction with respect to building maintenance, that it doesn't push with respect to healthcare costs.
One of the anecdotes I was going to give sort of doesn't align with that. So recently, Charlie and I were talking about utility costs, and he was saying, if a building, part of a building is put into use for extended hours, sometimes we have to run the HVAC system for a large portion of that building, not just for a small, a small classroom, and it has significant increase in utility costs. And I don't remember all the details of the story he was telling me, but basically there was some question about using one of the schools for an extended period of time. And someone on the school side and their facility department said, well, let's just do it, And Charlie thinks it may have doubled utility costs for that building for an extended period of time. And that's what I think, Chaz was saying, you have to, or what I was getting at, you have to really have an alignment between who's making these decisions and choices and who is going to see it and cover it in their budget, who has the financial liability.
Okay, fair point.
Yeah. Cliff, do you want to chime in?
Well, Carol makes a good point. But we have seen over the last several years, I believe we saw this last spring, where the challenge becomes revenues needed for programmatic needs, and where does the school committee go and look? And I seem to remember that last spring there was a fairly large proposed reduction in what the building department was going to get. And the benefit of above the line is, you take that away and you eliminate that possible tension. I do appreciate what Carol just said, and I do appreciate the idea of people understanding the impact of the decisions they make. But what ends up happening, we saw this a couple of years ago. Now, it certainly wasn't all on the schools, because the town is the one who forecasts utility costs. But if you don't allocate everything that the building department believes you need, you go through a process and you go to town meeting, you ask for somewhat less for the schools to give to the building department. And then at the end of the day, there is a shortage of funds to deal with utility costs, as an example. It goes to a reserve fund transfer, right? So you're not necessarily getting the behavior that you feel you might get by putting that stuff below the line. And I don't know how to solve that issue, but I think it's a real one.
Do we have any sort of estimate, and maybe this is too broad a question, but an estimate of what we would have as a cost difference by combining the agency here, if you will? I mean, I know we've looked at a lot of it, but is this, we're wasting $100,000, is $1 million? Do you have any idea?
But it's already combined, Jeff. The schools doesn't have like a full building. It's all managed by the town already.
Everything.
Yeah, I guess
but everything except custodian. I mean,
That's
well,
right, custodial is not
custodians are
budgeted.
directly managed by the schools still.
Yeah.
And there's still some facilities people in the schools
Yes.
beyond the custodians that, you know, from my perspective, in a perfect world, if you had these detailed occupancy and service agreements, those people would be reporting to the building division, but their job would be to service the schools. And there would be clear understanding as to how they were supposed to be servicing the school and providing for their needs, even if it was things like planning and space planning for individual spaces or how much space they need. And there's certainly precedent for that in the nonprofit world.
I think, Jeff, you could look, for example, Charlie Simmons's memo, right, to
Yeah.
this committee talks about where his delta is between what he thinks he needs for the town and the schools in FY27 and where the budgets are. On the town side, at least, we're trying to cover that in our override ask. We're saying, look, Charlie projects $180,000 gap between what he is getting on the town side and what he needs. On our end,
Right.
we're asking for 150. We think we're going to realize some efficiencies based on what he's asking for. That's going to allow us to reduce that number slightly. Because one of the things that he's asking for is another plumber. If we get another plumber, we should be able to reduce our reliance on contract labor, and that will
Yes.
ultimately
Yeah.
result in some efficiencies. So there's that delta. On the school side, it's higher. It's like, I don't remember what it's in the $1 million range. And
No,
so
it's 400,000.
is it 400?
Yeah,
Oh.
it was like 3.5 versus 3.9, I thought, or 3.6 versus 3.9.
Okay.
Yep, and we've talked about finding 130,000 of it in the car and the HVAC tech savings.
Right. So I think, right, that's where we're kind of, that's what we're
Yeah.
talking about. There's that
That-
delta.
Exactly. I mean, from a pure E&R standpoint, with all the, who gets to make the decisions and all that aside, what are we talking about being able to maximize here, right? If we did it a different way, could we save more money or earn more money? Again, back with the lens of what the charge of the committee is. And that was really the number I was looking for, is what do we think we could possibly improve on here? And is that ultimately going to be worth changing, how we're doing it, or what other pieces that we want to factor in there as to why we're doing it the way we're doing it?
And I think to Dick's point and Carol's point earlier, right? What you're doing is you are making a concerted investment in something that is, not necessarily proving a negative, but, effectively eliminate, staving off future disaster. You are
Right.
investing your money now in the operating budget, and that's where you're investing it under the assumption that what you are staving off is future one-time capital projects that will be significantly larger than they would otherwise be if you had not operated
For the maintenance.
an effective
Right.
repair and maintenance schedule.
Yeah.
I think it actually goes beyond that, because there is the question of what level of facilities can any department, including the schools, support in their budget, and have the schools overbuilt, and do they need to right size? And when we're looking at things like, I don't know, the Baldwin School or the old Lincoln School, who's carrying those things in their budget, and are those things that should be monetized for the benefit of the school as a whole? We have 6 extra classrooms right now in Driscoll. We're opening a new 4-section school, and that's going to significantly increase the new Pierce. Oops, can you still hear me?
Yep. Not now.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yes.
yes,
Yes. Now.
go ahead, speak.
I'm trying.
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Volume, hold it.
No, we're good. I'm good.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, my earbuds keep on dying on me. But so we can't really answer the question right now as far as what are we talking about saving or realizing, because we aren't asking the question of how much money or how much of the school's budget should be going towards supporting facilities And if we had that answer, what would the right size be? Right now, we're saying we're aiming for X class size, whatever it is. And we believe we have this population, so we want this many classrooms and this many square feet. And we've never asked the question is, how much money are we willing to be paying on an annual basis to support that large of a footprint? And those are really hard questions to both get your arms around and to have to face.
Yeah, yeah. Mariah?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Um, I think that there's two questions we're talking about, which you alluded to. One is the question of the expenditures, and then the fact that there's the revenues. And I do think that the bigger opportunity here is to really get, in my opinion, well, there's two big opportunities, but the thing that is maybe less core to the mission is how to address the revenue situation and to accurately cost out which spaces we're going to use and make decisions about which spaces. For example, the anecdote that Carol shared about something that, you know, doubled the building cost. Well, we shouldn't be renting out that space, right? That's just not a space that is an appropriate, or whatever, or it's going to cost $10,000 a day or
Right,
some sort of crazy amount, right? But I think part of the issue is, and we dealt with this the last time that we updated our building rental fees, is we increased them by 40% after not having increased them for 3 years, but we had no data on whether or not on what the actual cost to run any of these spaces is. And so like that is a genuine need of ours. And that would perhaps really start to get at some of these questions, independent of where the revenue goes, or if it's rec running it or PSB running it or anything else. Like just literally how much does it cost to have, you know, blah, blah, blah group use the building on Saturday morning? We would need to know that, and it would be really helpful to get that information.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Which sounds like it'll be different depending on which building it is, because of whether you can have the HVAC running in one room or the whole building, slice of it in between.
Yeah. And we have differentiated rates, but for example, if one of the buildings, you know, we don't even know that the rates that we have are accurate, and certainly we don't have no sense whether renting one room means the entire HVAC for the building needs to be on. That's certainly not accounted for in the rates that were developed.
Gotcha. Dick, you want to jump in?
Yeah, this I think probably is for Chaz and Carol, perhaps. Where would this concept of an occupancy and service agreement fit in, or how would it fit into our structure at this point, and our cost allocation methodology at this point?
I think it would really depend on what it says, you know, and what it is. It's not to be facetious about it, but it is.
No.
It's. Let me put it this way. I think this extends broader than just public buildings. It's something we've been saying for a long time. We need to have documented agreements between the town and the schools about services that we share. They've got to be very clear, and they've got to lay out responsibilities and chains of communication and standard operating procedures and all that stuff. We really have to put it out clearly so that if something goes wrong, if there's an issue, I mean, some of the stuff that Mariah raised is points very well taken, right? Schools need this information and we should be able to get it to them. And there should be a clear process for doing that. That's not necessarily financial. There's no necessarily a financial component to that. There's an operational component to that. There's a good government component to it. The other kind of bigger question that will arise out of that is, once you have those understandings in place, where are your efficiencies? You know, to Carol's point, are there positions that, you know, does it make sense for these positions to stay on the school side if what they're doing is so integrated with the public buildings division that really they should come over to public buildings, with the understanding that this is not a loss of service or of communication to the schools, right? The single biggest complaint that we get is that The town doesn't tell us, the schools say the town doesn't tell us what it's doing, right? We can't get in touch with the town when we need to get in touch with the town. It's not good for us to have to rely on the town because the town is unreliable. And so my commitment to the superintendent has been, if we get these documents together, you have a way of producing and maintaining accountability, which is all of a sudden the town can't say, well, I'll get to it later, or whatever it is that you're experiencing. Because we have an agreement in place that says these are your responsibilities. It's your job to do this. And if you don't do it, then there are consequences for that. So that's been my aim in this is, I hear the complaints the schools raise about services that the town provides. And I say, man, if I had an agreement that I could then wave in the face of a town employee and say, why aren't you doing this? Go do it. It would make our lives a lot easier. But I don't have that. And so from a monetary standpoint, you might see some shifting around in the margins. You might see, or you might see something seismic if we put all this on paper and say, you know what, maybe it does make sense to run this above the line. But it would really depend on what the contours of that looked like. And I think the issue has been, we just haven't had the capacity to sit in the same room together. I would call I would call a public building summit, let's sit in a room for a couple hours and hash this out over the course of a week and figure out what our actual roles and responsibilities are so that I can go back and talk to people and make sure that they actually do the job they're supposed to be doing.
Sorry, just taking some of my own notes here. Cliff, sorry, I see your hand is up.
Well, good, because you can give them to me because I'm, failing at taking notes.
The transcription is magic. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I get enthralled by the commentary. I
Yep.
guess I want to go back to the above the line, below the line question, and I'm going to compare it to benefits, healthcare costs. Healthcare costs are contractual, right? You can put them below the line and everyone knows that they're going to be paid to a third party because we've contracted to pay them. That's different than what happens with money for the building department that's given to the schools. And once it's given to the schools, yeah, there are conversations, and there are plenty of times when the schools, meet their obligation as they've talked about. But there also are times when, budgets get tight and they change their mind during the spring. And it's understandable given the way things operate. It strikes me, Chaz, that if at the end of the day it's just two people making the decision as to what's going to go, you eliminate that volatility, and there's a real benefit to that. And I don't think it should be discounted how valuable that is for the organization and for the two people, who each side of the ledger entrusts the day-to-day operations of the system with. So it's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. I think that is a real benefit to this. But I think what ultimately kind of sits there for me is, even if we were to do that, I would want there to be clear accountability for those two people in terms of the agreements that we make and how we work with each other and all of that stuff. Because, the current superintendent, Bella and I have a great working relationship. I really enjoy working with the superintendent. She's doing great work. But it's bigger than us, right? Like, people change, positions change. And I would want it to be sustainable. I want it to outlive us. And I wouldn't want there to be a system in place that relies on the people in it in order to succeed. So
has Belmont had any, I was curious to whether or not you spoke to people at Belmont to understand whether in the past they've had problems along this line.
I did not have a lot of success. I had much more success talking to places like Wellesley than I did with Belmont. They're a mysterious bunch up there. But I'm happy to reach out to them again.
Curious.
Interesting. Okay, I don't see any other raised hands, and part of what.
I just want to apologize quickly. I do have to jump
Oh.
off. I've got a meeting at 6:30. I gotta get ready for. So
Sure,
I will,
no
any
problem.
questions you have, I will try and circle back.
Great, thanks, Chaz. Appreciate
Thanks.
it. Part of why I was taking notes was to just try to see whether there was some way I could bake this into where we wanted to go here, as far as if we wanted to make a recommendation proposal, or we wanted to include some of this, discussion or analysis in our report. The tricky part, which I only have the last update from the beginning of February. Does anybody have a more recent timeline than this one? Because for this schedule that Sadaf had sent out, we only have one more meeting of our subcommittee, which is next Monday. And then we have full ENRs. Now, of course, we could schedule some more, but I think based on what Sergio and Sadaf, and I can't remember who's running the town subcommittee, and Chaz, I think this schedule was sort of supposed to be the confluence of all the subcommittees coming together to get us to the end. But Dick, was it about the schedule, or did you have another point? Sorry, I just noticed your hand was up.
No, it was not about the schedule, except peripherally. It was a question really for Carol as to whether this discussion is moving ahead through a channel other than this committee.
Oh, good question. Yeah.
This subcommittee. And it, I guess, relates to the schedule. It relates to what we do, but I'm wondering, are we the last chance saloon here, or is there?
Well, that's kind of where I was going too.
Is there? Is the structure, the use and occupancy, the above the line, the below the line, is that an active discussion that is taking place somewhere else in a way that it's moving towards some sort of thoughtful resolution?
The concept of an occupancy and service agreement is something I've spoken with Chaz about in the fall. And not much has happened. And I know, it's the whole question of, he has the larger issue of getting these agreements with the school department. But I believe that occupancy and service agreements should not be limited just to the schools. It really needs to be some sort of standard document that applies across all town departments. Whether things should be above the line or below the line, I think falls out of how you, when you really think about the occupancy and service agreement, will become more apparent when you start assigning roles and thinking about where they best belong. So I think these agreements do have some financial ramifications, but the capital subcommittee of the AC, which I chair, is something we'll be talking about this when we review the public buildings, the building department's budget.
Okay.
And that's the extent of pushing it along. So this would be great if your report includes a recommendation to have written occupancy and service agreements that define the responsibilities both operationally and financially. As far as making recommendations above the line, below the line, I think you don't have time to delve into that and come up with a good recommendation. I think you just need to encourage this to be done.
Cliff?
Yeah, so Carol was going along the same lines of what I was going to say. We have the facilities report for rentals, and there's a discussion in there about ownership of the town buildings, right? And management of the town buildings. I don't know how to necessarily do it elegantly, but I think this could be woven into that, or maybe it is a separate document that refers to some of the stuff that's in the other facilities document. I'm not sure we can do much more than that, given the limited time. And this is obviously a very complex situation. The question about rentals of this space, of not after school space, or even during the day, if they're rentals, people using buildings, that just the whole issue of management, control, systems, agreements, there really should be sort of a universal approach to things.
Yeah.
Carol, I do have a question as to what sort of relationship are you talking about with respect to buildings and other departments? You mean like buildings in the fire department, buildings in the police department because they have their own facilities, or
Well,
what?
I think every, the public building division is responsible for all town facilities, with the exception of a few things that DPW is responsible for. And I think that the laying out of the public buildings division's responsibilities to departments is important. I think, it should be documented and it should be consistent unless there's a reason for an exception between certain departments. And I think, I don't know if the community room at the public safety building gets rented out. I don't know if rooms at the library get rented out, or the health department. I don't know what the rules are around those places, but there should be a consistent procedure for doing so. And I think, just like Sergio was when we were talking about solar panels, I think there needs to be a consistent approach towards how the savings from solar panels are captured, and whether those get put into a general bucket, they get allocated back to the occupant of that building, those savings. All these things need to be looked at holistically and consistently throughout town.
Yeah. So sorry, go ahead, Clay.
I was just going to say that I think that we also need to be realistic. This is not something that's going to happen in the next couple of months. But I do think getting it on the table and getting a process potentially on people's radar screen that gets started within our lifetime would be really positive.
Yeah. So I'm like up and down on the idea that you had, Cliff, about including it in the rentals, because in a way it obviously is related to that, but in a way it's sort of not related to that. It's more of this occupancy and service agreements. Having it in that document gives it a little bit of foundation, because we've had a well-written recommendation and analysis there. Having it as it's sort of a one-pager might seem a little off, but that being said, if we really wanted to include something, which I'm in favor of, something in the recommendation of an occupancy and service agreement, recommendation, we probably need to do it this week and then have it come to this subcommittee next Monday and vote on it to then merge into the full report and all that. So I don't know if it's easier to add it to what you already had written, Cliff, not to continue our theme of piling on work for Cliff, but what does everybody else think as far as what we might do here?
So I guess one question that I have is whether this is something that should be, because it is going across not just schools but other departments, whether or not it is something that should be talked about with town subcommittee, or whether or not we can put something together and bring it to the full committee and not worry about that politicking.
I thought about that too, and my worry was that we're just too close to the end, and just the shifting gears of kicking it over, or at least trying to do that might we just might run out of time. And I thought the same thing you just said at the end, right? If we wrote it, it could then be reviewed by the full committee. And then obviously if at some point in that process, the town subcommittee said, well, this isn't what we wanted, we want something different, then we're sort of the end. But,
So here's an idea. We could put some reference about this document into the facilities document and put this.
Oh, pizza's there.
So Pepper doesn't like this idea. And put that as an appendix. So the memo, Carol's memo, which I think would need to be, changed a little bit, would be in that document. It would be an appendix, but so it's sort of standalone. It's not really woven into the fabric, but it is referenced somewhere up in the beginning. I could take a stab at that.
Dick, and I think Mariah had to drop off, unfortunately.
My only thought was that this is obviously a much bigger issue than the rental issue. So,
right.
I don't know if you append it to the rental or kind of have it. I mean, I would not suggest that the rental be appended to this because the rental really stands on its own. But what do you think, Cliff?
I'm indifferent. I really am. I'm just
you understand the issues.
Yeah.
Schools, town, rental, ongoing, quite apart from the rental, it deals with the occupancy of the town and school departments that are using buildings, even if they don't rent them out. So
I guess look, I guess the only thing I'm concerned about is that we're going to put out a couple page write-up,
right,
covering something that's really important and complex and not have a lot of backup. But I think it's certainly, if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. I mean, it's better than not doing anything.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's worth referencing. I'm just trying to also, like you guys are trying to come up with like what's the best way to frame it. And if we had more time, we would make it its own analysis and recommendation, right? But it's just even if we were to do that, someone has to do that this next week, and then we have to review it and then potentially vote on it next Monday without a lot of edits, right? I mean, it's not impossible, but
well, the other thing is, because this doesn't have an immediate impact.
Sure.
It's not going to impact any recommendation for a proposed override. I think we have some latitude in terms of whatever write-up we do. I don't think we're going to have the bandwidth unless Carol is really wants to, expand on this significantly. So I think the next step is to go back and take a look at the memos, see if there's stuff that we want to just, clean up, maybe modify, make it a little bit less aggressive.
Well, I was going to say, I personally
strange coming from me, but
right. I like the recommendation of the occupancy and service agreements. And at this point, I'd be happy to sign up for that as a yes, right? But beyond that, I likely would be, hey, we really need to spend more time studying this before we talk about taking it away from the schools or above the line, below the line, because I think there's just too much there to do in a week, to feel good about saying, yeah, let's definitely recommend that.
Well, we certainly would want to say this is a significant issue, and
100% agree with that.
It should not be dropped the way that recommendations from the 2014 override report never got looked at again.
Well, I think we've all been on all those committees, right? Between this 2017 OSC and BFAC that three of us were on. So we're used to some of these recommendations being dropped. But anyway, I'll hand it back to Carol. So
I was just gonna say, I'm happy to rework that memo since, to make it less specifically about the public schools and just about public buildings. If I'm hearing correctly, that's what you're supportive of. And
And that was also your point, I think, that this is not something that is specific to the schools.
right, I mean,
So they
that
obviously
intro,
are the biggest player.
yeah, the intro to the memo was written that way because you're the school subcommittee.
sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to give background. But that can get cleaned up, and the point of the bottom line, that recommendation can be highlighted. Just tell me when you need that by, cleaned up by.
How about 7 o'clock?
But how about like Sunday?
Yeah, I can do that on Sunday with your help, Cliff.
Yeah,
Since-
sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sergio's MIA now.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Something that would give us a little bit of time to look at it ahead of the meeting, which I think is 5 o'clock on Monday.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, the good thing is it's a short memos.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we
yeah,
are
yeah.
our third time going through it, which is good. Yeah, let's shoot for that. Now, I do think that talking about above the line, below the line, the benefits and risks of either, it would be a good thing to add in, because there are still a number of issues that were that group never finished its work. So maybe worthwhile. Anyway.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. If you and Carol are able to do that, that would be wonderful.
yeah, and
Okay.
maybe we want to include a recommendation for a working group to hammer this out, instead of, going one step beyond just an occupancy and service agreement. Perhaps take it off the, so it's not fully on Chaz's plate
Mhm.
Mm,
to do it.
mm.
Yeah, maybe we could get the
Yeah.
TSP to actually do something.
Now you're just getting crazy on us, Cliff. So,
Yeah.
but okay, let's conclude that discussion.
Okay.
Say yes, that sounds good. Mariah texted me and said she's expended all cycles that she can do for town meetings today, and so she's not coming back for today. I did want to briefly go back to the beginning. I had noticed in a couple mails that I had that Carolyn, you had sent us a mail, which Sadaf had asked Nicole, and she copied me in because she's not going to be here, to discuss in the new business your email about some of the free rentals. I wanted to just double check that you knew that we were going to talk about that, or you wanted to talk about it, or didn't want to talk about that before we went too far, because I always hate it when people show up at these meetings and they go on for 2 hours and then it's like, oh yeah, now it's my turn. So was that something you wanted to talk about tonight? I just wanted to double check. I don't know if you can unmute yourself anymore, or maybe you're not there at this moment. Okay.
Oh,
there
I'm
we go.
here now.
There
I
you
was
are.
not able to unmute. Hi,
Oh, cool. Thank
can
you.
you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm not going to turn my camera on. I'm in
No worries.
I'm in a very slouchy position, and I'm not going to move. So I did see that was in your agenda. It's not why I'm here, because as you know.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm, which doesn't mean I wouldn't be happy to comment, but if that's not appropriate, that's also fine too. It's not why I'm here. I did communicate, I think, with Sadaf, as well as school committee colleagues, Bella, Susan, recently in the past. So this is sort of, and Sadaf told me she would post the email that I sent her. And this is not critical, which surprised me because I'm not used to that as a practice, but that's fine because it wasn't secret. And I know enough not to put something in writing that I'm not willing for the whole world to see. So yeah, happy to comment, not why I'm here.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. We will do Cliff's piece on the regular agenda and then we'll double back, Carolyn. And if you'd like to talk about it at that point, we'll do that. And if not, then we won't do that. So Cliff, you are up next with recommendations on override, or at least that's what was on the agenda. So I'll turn it over to
Yeah.
you and see, I don't know, you gotta help me out here, so.
Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know what exactly to say about this because, you, I don't know if this is a conversation just to have with this subcommittee or really it's something that ultimately is had with the larger committee. I guess the question that I had talked to Sadaf about, or Sadaf had talked to me about, was whether there's any utility to consider a 1-year override. Because, you know, we have a fiscal 27 budget.
Right.
We really don't have 28 or 29 3-year budget from the schools. And so to a certain extent, it's, well, how are they going, what are they going to ask for? How are they going to explain to people what they're asking for? Unless it's just a continuation of the current circumstances, right? No new programs, it's just sort of like adding, just rolling things forward. Val, maybe you can tell us what the expectation is there.
Ooh.
Can anyone,
I
can
think
Val?
Nicole is the unmuter, but sure, why not? If Val would like to comment, I'm happy to hear from Val.
There we go. My understanding of the projections for expenditures that we've put out for FY 28 and 29 are rolling forward 27 with the efficiencies that have been baked into 27 carrying forward as well. No
And that's,
no significant new program or anything like that.
and so that's going to be what your 3-year request is going to be based on?
Yes. It's based on the numbers that you've seen put out at the meeting a week and a half ago.
Okay.
So I guess the thinking may have been, we're going to be, when you add all this together, you're looking at what, over $20 million? Is that?
For 3 years?
I think it's
Yeah.
just under, but this, I don't want to get ahead of my skis. The superintendent is going to speak to the full committee tomorrow and a week from tomorrow, the full ERSC committee.
Okay, so I was thinking more, what's the total for the town and the schools? So the total for the town and schools is going to be low 20s, low to mid 20s. Is that right? If
Sounds
it's
right.
just under, it's just under 20 for the schools, a little over
Yeah.
5, so it's 25-ish.
Yeah, that
Right.
sounds right for the gaps.
Yep.
And so it really becomes a calculus as to whether or not that is gonna be palatable to people, and whether or not there's a different approach to take. And again, I don't know that this is a conversation that we should be having right now.
Sure. Well, we had a little bit in last week's full committee at the end, and please pardon me, I can't remember who all was there. I know we didn't have everybody there, but we had a similar, 1 year, and it was more town and schools, not just school side. And we sort of also came to the conclusion that maybe we should get more people before we go down that path any farther. But I mean, if there's some piece you want to noodle on, Cliff, I think happy to have that discussion we want to do it here, or if we want to just punt it back to tomorrow, then that's cool too. I don't have any religion here. I was just following the agenda, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, no,
So,
I understand.
yeah.
I think, I personally think it's a conversation that's best had once we actually have, hear from the superintendent, we
Yeah.
get the final or the initial presentation from the deputy town administrator, which the advisory committee is going to get tonight. We get a combined 3-year forecast, and so then we can sort of start talking through that type of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
makes sense.
what is the combined, if we can just talk about timing here a little bit,
Sure.
the combined 3-year override request would be put together with numbers from meetings when AC is getting the final town numbers tonight, or is that
What final? I mean, things change during the spring. I don't
Yeah.
think I'm not sure the governor has fully thought through everything that she wants to propose. I heard someone made a comment today about the GIC, and they were thinking about how to change some things there, but the governor has not fully decided what she's going to propose.
okay?
I
Well, we're
can't
not gonna
figure
get
out
new
how to
numbers.
raise my hand, but I can talk a little bit about the
Oh.
GIC if you want.
Yeah, go ahead,
Sure,
Val.
please.
So the GIC issue was proposal made by the governor to have some plan revisions, so take out the GLP-1 coverage, and then also increase some things like copays by somewhat significant margins. That was supposed to be voted on a week ago. And I think because of pushback from the unions, that vote has been deferred to the 26th. So and could get kicked again. So we'll see if there's savings that comes out of that. And if there's a compromise, I don't think that is going to be significant savings to Brookline. If it all goes through, it could be, $2 million in savings to Brookline. But if there's a compromise, it could be some much lesser amount, or they could just leave the plans as they are.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that would be the 26th, probably at the earliest.
Correct.
Okay. Putting that aside, the town side, anything else in flux that you know of, Cliff, Val?
I don't know of anything. I'll know more after tonight.
Okay.
I think there's still some back and forth as to what Charlie Simmons is going to get. And that probably, depending on where the town lands on that will impact how much the school's 8.1 or 8.2 drops, right?
Isn't the OPEB policy also on the agenda for today?
Well, I don't think anything's going to happen with OPEBs immediately. I think, well, at least this organization, this future subcommittee's recommendation is that a study committee be formed to, evaluate whether or not in 2031, right?
Sorry,
after the-
I meant on the select board's agenda for this evening.
Oh, that could be, but I can't imagine they're going to do anything radical at the moment. What have you heard?
My understanding is the vote or the discussion is just about whether to continue the current policy, right? Which would
Funding.
impact override numbers.
So they're freezing it for this year. I mean, they're level funding it for this year.
Correct, and I think the discussion is, do you continue beyond just 1 year?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So, Dick, we can add that to the list of potential
Un-
changes.
Of unknowns.
Yep. And then it sounds like schools are gonna come, or Dr. Wong's gonna come tomorrow for updates on that side.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And if I heard you correctly, Val, you said tomorrow and also next week.
Yeah, I
Dr.
believe that her full sort of budget update for you all is going to be on the 25th because it wasn't noticed for tomorrow, but she will
Okay.
be at tomorrow's meeting.
Ah, okay. Thank you for that. So that looks like probably next week, Dick will have as much info as we're gonna get.
By the 25th.
Yeah, or possibly the 26th if you wanted to see what the governor had to say if that happens and doesn't get deferred again on the GIC piece.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you have a thought piece there, or just gathering data?
I had in mind the schedule that you have posted,
Yeah, me too.
and that may now be unrealistic a little bit.
That was why I brought it up earlier, because I didn't want to drive off the cliff, as they say, right? Because we're just so close to that actual true deadline of getting things over to town clerk, right? And still having to go through all the process of the public meetings and the select board and what they're going to do and discussion and all that stuff. So, okay, well, it sounds like from the three of us voting members who are still here that we're going to say, let's talk about this again tomorrow in full committee, right? And it is 6:26. So I'm going to circle back and see if Carolyn wants to talk about her mail, I should say, which again, feel free to say, hey, thanks for reading it, but we don't have to talk about it. It's up to you. And then also see if anyone has any new business after that for anybody else who's come. So, Carolyn, would you like to chat on your note? We've got Nicole working overtime tonight.
Thank you. Thanks, Nicole. Sure. And I'm not, I will turn my video on and let's see what we look like.
The slouching. Oh, you're not slouching
No,
at
I'm
all.
standing now. I'm making dinner now. So I actually didn't even look at the particular email that I sent to Sadaf, but I can, from memory, I think I wanted to draw her. I knew that she and Sid were looking at some building issues. I know that Cliff was looking at some building issues, and the purpose of this group has been, as I understand it, to identify potential revenue sources and efficiencies. So when I realized that people were talking about buildings, I remembered this issue that I tried to draw attention to maybe a year and a half ago or so, maybe also again this year. It's one of these that I've raised a few times and it just hasn't kind of gotten traction. But it is the question or fact that there are independent nonprofits that have office space in PSB buildings, and they're not charged for them. So we love all organizations. We love our after school programs. We charge them. We love recreational programs. We charge them. So it just feels like, you know, we love teachers and we cut their jobs. So much as it's never comfortable to talk about, having to take money when money hasn't been taken, I just think it's the responsibility of the school committee or department to look at where there's, I think, money on the table or lost opportunity for revenue. And in particular, and again, it's not fun. It's no more fun than talking about cutting jobs. I've been on the board of the BEF. The BEF is wonderful. We all love the BEF. But a couple of years ago, the Baldwin School was renovated, and somehow the BEF ended up in there. There is a process prescribed by law, as I understand it, that the school committee is supposed to go through when making a decision about either renting space to independent organizations or disposing of real property. I don't believe either of those were gone through, which is a little bit of a side issue. So I guess it's just kind of, wanted to draw attention to those potential opportunities by folks who are going to be creating a report on such things.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
definitely.
I mean, is that enough of an overview?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I didn't realize that this was a thing, so I appreciate you bringing it up. I'm curious about the policy. It sounds like there is policy in place that we should be charging. So are we not enforcing it, or something else
The
going on?
policy that I'm aware of in PSB, and I don't have this in front of me, there is a policy about how we work with what's defined as partner organizations, which actually, as I understand it, are the after schools. So, and I'm not trying to throw sort of everything that's done into disarray, but in the past when this has come up, one of the responses that I have received was, well, there are partners and these organizations work directly to support students. Actually, not exactly the case in all of the cases where we have the situation, but there is a definition of partner organizations in the PSB policy. I don't think that the independent 501c3s that are not after school programs fit into that. And then there's statute, and I think, is it 30B? I think that sort of defines, at least that school committees, if they choose to lease property, should vote. And again, that sort of fell through the cracks, and not really, I'm not looking to kind of get into that. But more, again, just, I'm sitting in the school committee chair having to make really tough decisions about cuts, and I'm looking at something that seems to me to be a revenue opportunity that isn't being addressed. So, and I think I don't know that PSB policy addresses it. I think actually, I think it's 30B. It's like the real property.
Gotcha. Cliff or Dick, did you want to say anything or ask any questions?
My understanding from this to this point is we're talking about the Brookline Education Foundation.
And the Innovation Fund, I think, from the mail. I think maybe I just guessed that.
And I think Steps to Success, which is another 501c3.
Oh, right. Yes.
And again, like, I don't love naming the organizations, but they're 501c3s. Their tax records are public. I looked in order to make sure that I felt comfortable raising this. these organizations are in better shape than the public schools provide. So, and again, it's, you know, I'm not afraid to sort of bring something up that's awkward. It's awkward, but sorry, Dick.
Sure. Are you still there, Dick?
Yeah, I'm
okay.
here. I'm here. No,
Yeah, so a couple different organizations. Yeah.
Is this a rental issue that piggybacks on
Cliff. Yeah.
Cliff?
That's where I was going to go. But,
Yeah, so I mean, broadly speaking, sure, it is. It's a little bit different because, you know, the other one was more geared towards athletics, and, you know, rec clearly has a role there. But I think taking a step back, it does get to the whole issue of building management and, you know, having seal umbrellas, you know, for this type of stuff. And I guess we could try to weave that in somehow with whatever it is Carol and I do with her memo.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking the same. Perhaps there's a line in there about just, you know, considering all parties and all usage of the facilities and making reference here. I think that might work. So, oh, Mariah's back.
Yeah, no, I just
It's a
admitted
ghost.
it.
Holy schmoly.
Yes,
Oh,
I'm
she's-
back. I was able to join from the car.
Oh,
So, yeah.
I thought you were just done. So,
I
had
was when I
enough.
went home, but I was back out again, and I thought, let me listen a little more. So here I am. A glutton for punishment.
I was going to say, God bless you. So, well, we're just about to wrap up. We were just chatting about the memo or the mail that we had posted that Carolyn had written about some of the 501(c) groups and usage of facilities. So we were almost about to wrap up, but
Did you talk about like I think most, if not all of those are exclusively to benefit PSB?
We did.
Okay.
And that doesn't make a difference, though. I mean, our policy doesn't exclude us. Like, we charge after-school programs, which actually fit the definition of partner programs in our policy. So
well, I think we're inconsistent in that we don't charge PTOs. And we do charge other partners, as you say. And so I was just wanting to make sure that bit of, I'm not weighing in one way or the other. Just the fact is that they are in exclusive support of PSB programming.
Do PTOs have offices in the schools?
Sorry, go ahead, Mariah. I think
I wouldn't call it an office, but a storage space, I guess. Yeah.
There's storage spaces in some of them, but there's not like an office like people go in and use. I mean, at least I'm just speaking from the BHS PTO. We don't have an office at the high school.
Yeah, but this here, I think we are talking about office space, as I understand it. For these,
right, but PTOs, for example, if a PTO rents, if a PTO uses, let's make an example, the auditorium for a movie night, we don't charge them the cost of the rental cost of the auditorium. They just rent it at zero cost. That's what I was trying to, it's different than the leases. It's the rental of space.
Yep.
And I think possibly Driscoll PTO may have like a small room, but I'm not sure if I don't think it's an office. I think it's storage space, which would be true for basically all of them.
Yeah, I mean, there was one at Pierce as well. I remember seeing it up above one of the other downstairs pieces. It was a little scary, but you know, it was.
I was
what
going to
it
say
was.
at Baker, we used to call it the scary closet.
Yeah, it was definitely scary at Pierce as well. So, but I think,
But
I
that's
think
very different than like an office where people are going to work every day
100%. Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and operating their business.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
so I guess this gets flagged, is what I'm hearing.
Well, I think having a reference to it in the with the updates that we had talked on earlier about the occupancy piece that we talked about, Cliff and Carol working on, makes sense to have referenced in that rental memo if Cliff is up for that one-liner or whatever it ends up being. That seems reasonable.
And I would
then-
say that I don't expect that this one contributes substantially to expenditures or revenues. It does
Sure.
fall under the category of ensuring good practices and policies are in place, absolutely. And it does fall under the category of no stone left unturned, but it's not exactly a moving the needle item that one might need to highlight.
Part of the reason I thought about it, Mariah, in particular with the space at Baldwin, I would guess that that's worth about $2,000 a month. I could be wrong. And that's, you know, as much as we were talking about, that's almost double what we were talking about bringing in annually by raising the materials fee, which directly impacts teachers. So I was kind of thinking of, you know, it's lost potential, and it's certainly potentially in the kind of amount that we've talked about, making changes that directly impact individuals. So that's how I started thinking about it.
Mm.
Sure.
Okay. So I think that makes sense to add. And poor Cliff has signed up for everything tonight, which is wonderful, and he's probably on his way to AC at this point. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I need to hop because I gotta get
Yep.
something to eat
All right.
to bring
Yeah,
to
well,
AC.
I was gonna say I think we should end the meeting because I'm starving and I would
Okay.
love to go eat dinner too. So I think we should probably conclude our meeting unless anyone's got some super hot topic they want to mention.
No, sir.
No,
Nope.
sir. Great. Okay. All right. Well,
Thank-
thanks everybody. This
Thank you,
has been a
Jeff.
great conversation tonight.
Yep.
And,
If Nicole's
yep.
still on, could you please
She
send
is.
me the tape?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Will do.
The
Great.
links,
Thank you, Nicole, so
all
much.
the links.
Have a
Appreciate
good
you
night,
staying
everyone.
late
Thank
too.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
See you soon. Bye.